The title is Teachers AI Experts, and that is what I'm aiming to go through in this thing. Who am I? You can read it all in the brief. I waffle on a lot, but I am a teacher. I'm a full-time secondary school teacher. I live in the Canary Islands, but alongside other things, I'm also a UNESCO. I work with UNESCO as a sort of AI expert, and I write for the Times Educational Supplement. I've even written for the ISTE along the way. So lots of things. But none of that matters in 20 minutes. We're going to start with a challenge. The challenge is more difficult when I can't see you. All of this is going to have to be adapted. You can't start on AI without hearing about the words prompt engineering. So hopefully you can see my screen. And I've got 3 prompts on there, 3 things that you can imagine as like a baseline assessment for where we're at. And I want you to just think, we won't interact it, but think which of these are the best and why are they good. So we've got the first one you can put in. Summarize this article. How is that? Do we like it? The second one, summarize this article about recycling for 6th grade class. Do we like that more or less? Then we've got summarize the main ideas from this article about recycling, focus on the middle school students, what they should understand, include 3 facts, and keep the tone engaging and clear for 6th grade science class. Anyone want to give me any feedback? I'm going to go over to here. I know you can't see my screen, but it's so bizarre talking to myself. Anyone want to say which one they like the best? And it's a bit more interactive and a bit less weird. Anyone? Any of the comments? 3rd is best. I can see that. I've checked, but I realize now I've taken it off the screen. You can't read it. I'll flash back up. The 3rd one, the summarize the main ideas from this article about recycling. The 3rd is best. Agreed. Would we say the 3rd is perfect? Anyone say the 3rd is perfect? I'm looking at the comments. No.
You'll have to go back to it.
Okay. This is bizarre. Sorry, I'm jumping between the 2. I don't know how you do both. It's not the normal Zoom setup.
It could be improved.
I can hear someone.
It's me, Sarah. It could be improved by, for example, asking it to put, opposing views in the text, or to indicate what is popular opinion versus a more divergent view. That kind of stuff.
Love it. Okay, right. We've got some impact. No one's saying it's perfect, or the 2 people I'm talking with here aren't saying it's perfect. I'm going to go back to my slide. Oh, I've got more. Does it have any questions? 3rd is not the best, not perfect, because it can still be adapted. Okay, right. Well, going back to my slide, I hope you can see it. Shout out if you can't. OpenAI Education thinks the 3rd one is a great prompt. The first one was okay. The second one was a good prompt. And the 3rd one was a great prompt. Their words, not mine. Because my words, I hate them all, which is controversial. I hate them all. And I think we shouldn't be listening. Although I like OpenAI and ChatGPT, I don't think they're giving the right advice with this stuff. So that's what I'm going to try and prove in the next 15 to 20 minutes. I'm going to demonstrate why educators are natural AI experts, even if, and in fact, especially if they dislike it, and they don't need to be worried about those sort of prompt engineering frameworks. And then the second point, as you can see, I'm going to demonstrate why I ban talk of prompting in my classroom. Controversial stuff. Now, in planning all of this, I've been doing this talk for pretty much since it's come out, sort of 2 years now, I guess. And it's been best summarized, my views on this, last week when there was the London conference. Now, I'm going to play, but let me just see. I think you're not going to be able to hear it now, these extra exciting challenges. Maybe if I mute, I'm going to reshare my screen again, and this time it should come with sound. It will mute me.
You're absolutely right, Prime Minister. In fact, I would say, and this is a very important concept, AI is the great equalizer. And let me explain why. For the last 50 years, 60 years, computer science became a field of science, and it was available to tens of millions of people out of billions of people, and this technology was hard to use. We have to learn programming languages, we have to architect it, we have to design these computers that are very complicated. And so tens of millions of people were able to benefit from this particular field, but now, all of a sudden, there's a new programming language. This new programming language is called human. Most people don't know C++, very few people know Python, And everybody, as you know, knows human. And the way you program a computer today to ask the computer to do something for you, even write a program, generate images, write a poem, just ask it nicely. And the thing that's really quite amazing is the way you program an AI is like the way you program a person. You say, you are an incredible poet. You are deeply steeped in Shakespeare, and I would like you to write a poem to describe today's keynote. And without very much effort, this AI would help you generate such a wonderful poem. And when it generates it for you, you could say, I feel like you could do even better. And it would go off and think about it, and it would come back and say, in fact, I can do better. And it does do a better job. Yeah. And so this way of interacting with computers, I think, is something that almost anybody can do. And I would just encourage everybody to engage it. And just as the Prime Minister said a second ago, almost every children is already doing that themselves naturally. And this is going to be transformative.
Coming back to me, hopefully you can hear me again. I don't know whether you could hear that. If not, hopefully you could read it. So the key words in there for me, the key words, I'm just checking you can hear me. Just someone shout back at me if you can't. We hear it.
Yes.
Perfect. Yes, and you can hear me. Great. Thank you very much. I'll go back over here. So the key fact there, that was the head of NVIDIA talking to the British Prime Minister at the London Tech Week. And the key words in there, the way you program AI is the way you program a human. Now, as teachers, I don't think we talk about programming a human, but we get the gist of what he's saying. And he's saying anyone can do it. We use natural communication because that's what it's built upon. But I want to think about that. I want to think about who's best at programming or teaching humans. Because I think it's teachers. I think that's what we do every single day. So I'm going to throw a ridiculously silly challenge at you. And I want you to think back in your experience as teachers. And it's especially good if you're a teacher who hates technology. You don't like computers, but you've taught for a long time in a classroom and you've worked in the younger years with children's age 6 or 7. I want you to imagine that you've got one of your most annoying children in the class, nice, but super over-enthusiastic, always interrupting. And for whatever reason, I don't know why I created this, but you want this child, forget health and safety, but you need him to go to a different part of the school, and you need him to bring back this particular screw that you can see at the bottom of my screen, the one with a green tick. Now, in this room, there are 3 types of screws, but you want him to bring that specifically back. I want you to just think in your head, it'd be better if we could role play, but the tech here is too annoying. So just in your head, think through, how would that conversation go? You, as an experienced teacher, how would you have that conversation? What would you do in order to get this child to be able to go off and come back with the right screw? I'll give you 30 seconds. That isn't long enough, but 30 seconds to think about it. Really, how would you have that conversation with that child? Looking at myself, very bizarre. Okay, that wasn't 30 seconds. It was too nervous. But I'm going to give you another question. Now, would you swap yourself or another teacher out of that situation and replace it with any of these people? Would you replace it with a coder? Would you replace it with a data scientist? Would you replace it with a tech entrepreneur? It's a loaded question. I hope the answer is no way. If you think about even that guy, Jensen, do you think he'd do a good job with that little lad, Johnny or whatever? Do you think he'd be able to clearly get that child to go away and come back with the correct screw? I don't think he would. Now, that's why I think tech people need to talk about prompt engineering. They need to come up with this framework. And I've even written one myself back in the ISTE article, you'll see, back at the start, of role and all of those things. But I think they're misleading teachers. For teachers, they're already the experts and they just need to do what comes naturally to them. So I'm going to go off my slide because I hate not to seeing anyone. Anyone brave enough? Does anyone want to shout out some of the things that they might do to get this child to bring back the right screw? How would you have that conversation? What sort of things would you do? Anyone turn the mic on? Yeah, go on. Just shout out, Jonathan.
Okay, so what I would do, I can picture myself doing those 3-cup Monty little hustle. and then put 3 of the, the screws in there, and then have him, point out which one he has to find. And then, because it sounds like he has a lot of energy. And then so he'll be excited to get it and excited to go out and grab
so you'd
that
slow him
screw.
down. So I'm just going to start just for speed. You'd slow him down and say, whoa, Johnny, because we know as teachers, Johnny would try and run off. Yes, sir, I know it. You'd slow him down. You say, stop, focus. You look at me. You get him to repeat the instructions back to you. You might draw a picture of the screw if you've got the screws. Great. Anything else there, John? Adding in if I missed anything you said.
Well, I would put 3 of the screws in like cups that are upside down and kind of make it an exciting game for him to pick out the right one before he goes. So that way he's like really stoked about it. If that makes sense.
That's just brilliant. Yeah, I completely agree. See that? Are you a junior school teacher there for primary? I'm secondary. But again, that sort of creativity of making a game, really getting the understanding, that is not coming from tech. That's not coming from Jensen, I don't think. That just sounds fantastic. I'm going to go back to my slideshow. Apologies for the weird way. But those sorts of things are exactly the way that you should be treating AI and ChatGPT and the like of those, the generative AI. Now, there's an article that's in the whatever that it's called at the bottom, but the resources, I've written, there's 13 reasons why teachers are already experts. And it's just going through some of the things they tell you that you must do in prompt engineering terms, which to us as teachers are just common sense. So, for example, you wouldn't say to a year 3 people, write a story and then walk off. You wouldn't do it. The story would be terrible. You'd break it down into stages. That's the same way you should be dealing with AI, not because you followed a prompt, but just that's how you explain what you want. It's just good sense. A teacher doesn't just assume that it's understood. By the way, there's 13. I'm only going for 3 of them because of short of time. You can read all 13. But you don't just assume they understand. You don't just let Johnny go. You go, hang on a minute, repeat it back to me. Have I got it clear? That's good practice with AI. Again, comes naturally to teachers. Teachers who hate tech are brilliant at this because we do it with humans, little children who need advice and help. We're also used to the puzzled face when they get the answer and they haven't got it. We don't just repeat the same thing again and just say it a bit louder, or if we do, it's not work. We quickly learn that doesn't work. We adapt, we change. Same thing with AI. When you ask it for something, it's produced rubbish, the output's rubbish. We don't just repeat and do the same thing and blame AI. We say, well, hang on, maybe our explanation's not very good. Let's reword it. Let's think of a different way. Let's look at myself. Maybe it was my fault that the kid didn't know what was going on. That's the same with AI. I always say it, this year, in 2025, there's no such thing as bad output, just an unfinished conversation. Look what it produced. Well, you walked off too soon. You were in the middle of a conversation and you didn't adapt it to get what you wanted. It can produce what you want if you use all your teacher tools. I think I put one more. Then also, of course, the ethics of it. Well, teachers are the most skeptical people in the world, and that's great for AI. We should be skeptical. When Johnny came back, would you go, Johnny, have you got it? And then rely on it later on? There's no way you would. You'd say, Johnny say, yeah, I've got it in my pocket. You'd say to Johnny, right, bring it here. Let's have a look at it. Okay, well done. You did get it. Do the same with AI. Don't get the output and go, yeah, that's probably fine. Hand it in, it's done. No, be cynical of it. Look at it and go, well, I might have not explained it clearly. Those are all the sorts of things. Now, the article, there's 13 of them. As I said, in this time, I'm not going through 13. How are we doing for time? I've got 8 minutes. This really is a turbo session. I said 2 aims that I was going to try and do. I'll go for the second one in 8 minutes. So that, in a nutshell, is why I believe educators are natural experts. They need to forget all the jargon and the complicated prompt engineering. They need to do exactly what ChatGPT says, chat. You two-way communicate with AI. Now, chatting is great for understanding of teachers, but I also think it's wonderful in the classroom, and we should be encouraging children to chat. Often we don't. We encourage them, or businesses are encouraging prompt engineering because they're bothered about efficiency. They want maximum output in the shortest space of time. But we shouldn't be looking for that for educators. We want our children to learn, not learn quickly, but learn most of the time. So I discourage prompting and I encourage them to chat. Now, I learned this early on. I'm just going to, if you've read any of the articles I've written or the ISTE one that I wrote, I'm just going to go over it. So you've maybe heard it before, but I think not a lot has changed since 2 years ago when it first came out and I did it. In 7 minutes, I can do it. So the article is this one. It's in the link. Help students think more deeply with ChatGPT. And this was genuine, completely genuine. I did do this. It was with my year 8 in UK terms. So this is about my 12, 13-year-olds. Risky. This was at the head of when ChatGPT had just come out and it was all exploding on the scene. And I risked it. I said to my year 8 children, I said, right, for your homework, you're going to use ChatGPT to explain the predicted effects of climate change. And even in early days, they couldn't believe it. They thought, wow, this is cheating. This is amazing. But I said right at the start, okay, but there's a catch here. I don't just want your answers. You can give me your answers, but I also want your chat. I want screenshots of the actual communication back and forth that you've had with ChatGPT. Now, this is fantastic. You can just get the children, if you've got ChatGPT, to share their chat. Back then, you couldn't. I had to do it as screenshots, but they were fine. They did it. I found, looking at the time, I found that the children a week later broke into 3 categories, three distinct groups. And you can all imagine them, I'm sure. But there was the lazy group, the typical group, that just wrote, explain the predicted effects of climate change. They typed it into ChatGPT. ChatGPT gave like a 4-page answer, university degree level. They never understood it. They didn't read it, and they handed it in to me. And then I saw exactly how they'd done it. Then there was my brightest children, the top students. These are the best ones. They got online and they found out all about prompt engineering, and they found all of these role and all of these things. Fantastic. And what they gave me was fantastic. They gave me about a quarter of a page of appropriate to their level, good, detailed information for their level about the effects of climate change. Very nice. But the chat was also about half a page. It was one succinct prompt and then the answer. And then they gave me the answer. But there was the third group, the group I call the bickerers, a little bit like the Johnny that we had in this example earlier on. The children who like to argue with everything I say. They were the different group. They handed me in about 5 pages of them arguing back and forwards with ChatGPT, because they like to argue with everyone. They said, do this, and then they argued, and then it went back and forth. And then the answer they got was probably about a half a page to a page of good understanding. But here's the important thing I learned from this. In the final session, I've got a son who sounds like he's just fallen over in the background there. In the final session, a week later, I think he's all right. A week later, I said to them, I put a surprise test on them. I said, no notes. You can imagine how they're upset. I want you to write down everything you know about how climate change will affect the planet in the future. Now, those 3 groups became really interesting. The lazy group, I would say this isn't surprising at all, but if you read the recent MIT study on AI, they're getting very excited about it. The lazy group who didn't even read it, guess what? They learned nothing. They could write nothing. I don't think that's very surprising. You type in a prompt, treat it like a Google, don't read the answer, you learn nothing. A very academic group who prompt engineered, they wrote about 2 lines and then complained bitterly, saying, you didn't tell us there was a test, we didn't know anything. But here's the important thing. The third group, the bickerers, genuinely, they asked me for more paper. Because they'd bickered with it in 2-way learning, where they'd said something, they'd got feedback, they'd had that personalized experience, they understood it fully and were able to keep writing. That to me was a real turning point. It taught me a couple of things. First, taking in homework, don't be afraid to mark chats, not just answers. It's a good tool in avoiding the plagiarism issue. And third, forget them trying to get these prompt engineering. 2-way communication is fantastic. Now, good. I've got 30 seconds left. I'm going off my screen because I've hated not seeing it. I'm coming back to this one. In 3 minutes left, what I've just said comes with a fair bit of risk. You're going, haven't you said don't prompt engineer? Essentially, I've just said something which is a bit of a faux pas. Essentially, I've said what you should do is you should treat AI like a human. You should anthropomorphize it, that horrible word I can't say. That is risky and dangerous. Lots of people writing about that, but I'm still saying it. I'm saying it because I think it's necessary, particularly for teachers. I'm 43. For teachers of my age, I think in the short term, I need to anthropomorphize because I don't need to learn AI. I need to unlearn technology. Technology we've been brought up on Google where it's 1-way communication. You write a search and it gives you an answer. We need to break that cycle. Even the Alexa, we don't really have two-way conversation. We say it succinctly and hope for a good answer. AI, generative AI, is not like that at all. It is intelligent. It can two-way communicate. And therefore, we need to break that routine, change the mindset, and get us to think in two-way communication in the short term to break that cycle. Now, that is especially dangerous. I just spoke about my son falling over downstairs. I've heard he's all right, but he's 5. That is not necessary for him. He hasn't got anything to unlearn. He hasn't been brought up on Google and Google search. If I put ChatGPT on, he thinks it's Chatty GPT, and he will talk to it in exactly the same way that he speaks to his grandma. So I definitely don't want to be telling him, talk to it like a human. In fact, for the younger years currently, and this will change because it's moving fast, my current advice is for the younger years who have nothing to unlearn, I spend all my time telling them, don't think of it as a human. For the older teachers amongst us, that I think is our best way into this technology. Think of it like a human. I think we finished right on 50, which I don't know how, fairly miraculous. If we've got any questions, shout them out at me or type them in there. That was definitely turbo and very bizarre. Have I got anything? I certainly can, although they're very short. If you look in the resource, I've put the articles, I've got longs, and I've got the YouTube channel where I talk about these at great length. So all of this stuff, you can hear me waffling lots of time, but I'll certainly share the slideshow. Hope so. Hope it was an argument. I don't know whether I convinced anyone. So thank you very much.